If you take your food personally, like me, then you need to get on the Thrive food discovery and ordering app. Join the community of foodies on the Thrive feed where you can curate restaurant lists, ask for recos, and chat about all things food. So download it today and start thriving. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Speak Greasy. My guest today is Dina Weber, who is the founder and chief baker of Sapa Bakery in Mysore, and is now known around the country as much for her sourdough as she is for her Berliners. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And it's so great to have you here, Dina. And you've spent many days, cooking in this kitchen, doing workshops in this kitchen. So it's lovely to have you here just for a nice, friendly chat. You are a German living in Mysore. How did you end up there and start baking?
So it's been a longer story, I think. I came to India to backpack and to travel. And I always liked, while I traveled in Asia, I always wanted to stay around food or do things that were still related to food. And that could be working on permaculture farms, working in school kitchens, helping people in their bakeries or cafes, coffee flapping on organic farms. In India, I did that for about 2 years. So I switched from a project every 1 or 2 months in the winter season when I didn't have work in Germany. And then I would go from project to project. But after 2 years, I kind of got a bit tired of that. And I wanted to do something on my own because when you work in these projects, you're always very dependent on whoever runs the project. I had worked for a friend in Leh in his cafe. I was baking for him and he gave me complete freedom in baking and letting me experiment. And he was from Mysore and he always kept on dreaming about Mysore, swooning about Mysore, saying it's so nice, it's very calm, clean. And I wasn't a big fan of the large cities. So I thought, okay, why not try out Mysore? And when I went there, I really liked it. Immediately felt at home and still feel very at home. So it's been 7 years in Mysore.
Wow, that's very brave to just kind of like up and move to a completely new city.
I kind of just took it on. I never had like a huge goal of I want a bakery of this size and I want to reach there. I always did things based on what is the next step for me? What is the next small thing I want to do? And it felt very right to do it. And obviously I had to really learn a lot about the culture. I still don't really speak Kannada, but I can understand enough. And I think I understand enough now about the culture, how to deal with team members, how to understand what they expect out of me as their employer, what can I expect out of them as employees, culturally, how to deal with vendors, suppliers, construction. I mean, when you run something, there's so many things that play a part in it, and even administrative work with government offices work very different here than in Germany. So it was a huge learning, but I think that also keeps it very interesting and exciting because you have to adapt so much and you have to really be on your feet, be on your toes and always learn new things and be open for that as well. I don't think you can come in with a mindset of this is how I'm going to do it because I have done it this way all the time.
Yeah, I don't think anything in India works like it does in Germany. So you definitely had to be open to new challenges, that's for sure. But you started, with a small bakery, I think, behind an architect's office, is that correct? And then, you've grown, you're in a bungalow, with a full cafe and seating. Tell us a little bit about that progression.
I think my approach was always based on what is missing in Mysore and what would I like to see more as a customer. So I always imagined myself from that perspective. What would I enjoy? Where would I like to go and eat? And when I had my home kitchen, I had breads more on the side. But when I stopped my home kitchen because I had my daughter, people kept on asking me for the bread. So I always continued baking breads, making cinnamon rolls, babkas, like the boulangerie type pastries. And people kept on asking for that. And then I decided to team up with my friend who is an architect and share the space with her. And it was like a studio cloud kitchen where we did first only on order, and then we did the weekly bake sales and changed the menu. And I was never a huge fan of decadent French pastries and thought I only want to stay in the boulangerie line. It's a very German approach as well, something I grew up with that I can relate to very much. But when I took friend Hasnot's masterclass in Bangalore, and I had these pastries and I had a bite of all those textures and flavors, and it's this whole experience in your mouth. I was like, this is amazing, and I would love for people in Mysore to get something, obviously not as elaborate as what he does, but very delicate, classic French pastry that makes you so happy to have that in your mouth. And then I tried to work on that because obviously I knew that I didn't have a lot of training in that before. And I thought if I do a weekly menu, I can keep changing the flavors. I can keep experimenting, push myself to try new things, but still have a very small, dedicated menu that's not crazy to manage. But because I change it every week, the customers also have the chance to get something new all the time. And I think time-wise, that clicked really well with the people in Mysore. And it was a very small investment. I had one kneading machine, one work table, one mixer, one sales table, one fridge, one washing station, one oven, a small size of everything. That was only my investment. It clicked really well. People started coming. People were searching for it because it was on the second floor, hidden away. And people, even sometimes in the supermarket, people would come to me like, hey, Dina, where's this place where these pastries are sold? We want to have some, but we can't find it. And then came in this thinking of, hey, but if I have a pastry, I would love to sit down with a book and I would love to be in a lovely ambience and enjoy myself, enjoy my free time and have this as a little treat for myself. That's how I look at pastry. And that was not possible in that space. But everybody told me in Mysore, you cannot open something with your concept as a bigger place. It will not run. So for some time, that really took me back. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should just keep this as is and do my workshops in the bigger cities and use this as my base to experiment and learn. But then we became busier and a small space in a friend's house became vacant. And I kind of calculated it through and I was like, why not? If I have to invest a little bit of money, I had that privilege to say, if it doesn't work, it's a lesson and you will survive even if you lose this kind of money. And that was just 2 weeks before the lockdown. So very bad timing. Yeah, very, very bad timing. And lockdown came, everything was questioned again. It just started like rolling 2 weeks after opening. You hired new staff, you have new customers, and then everything is shut. It went back to only me baking and delivering straight to our customers in Mysore. But somehow the lockdown really helped us form a very strong bond with people in Mysore because they knew that we are a reliable approach for their treats in a way. So even if it's lockdown, even if times are really hard and you can't get a lot of things, you can't go out, you can still order a cake from us every week. That was happening throughout. And I think that gave us a really, really good community connection. And after the first lockdown, things just exploded. People from Bangalore, Hyderabad, Bombay started traveling inside the country much more, I think, than abroad. And they started coming to Mysore. They started hearing about us. And we had a tiny place. People started queuing up. We had to buy more machines, more ovens. And it kind of started this rolling game. And we just ran out of place. And I was like, this is totally unexpected. I had no idea that this was happening. But at the same time, I don't know if there's a second lockdown, third lockdown, fourth lockdown. What am I supposed to do? But at some point, if you run out of space, you can't push beyond a certain space. You need space for your packaging. You need space for cleaning. You need space for your staff to have lunch, for the team to have lunch. And we didn't have any of that. And then this really lovely 80-year-old bungalow became vacant. And I started talking to the house owner, and he's a very lovely person, very supportive. And then again, it kind of just clicked. I knew that the team was big enough and I can also focus on renovating this old bungalow, which took us 7 months. And then we moved and we had so much more space. We had a staff room and a staff kitchen and a walk-in fridge, and it felt like a huge luxury. And we were all very, very thrilled. And then it was all about adapting to more capacity, more customers. Now we have so many more new systems in place than we had then. So it's really been a constant evolution of how we work, how the team works, how shift timings are, and staying very flexible with that based on what is needed.
It sounds like you really grown a lot over the 7 years and grown fast. What was the audience like in terms of, a new product? Because I know that when we started our bakery around 7 years ago as well, actually, people weren't necessarily ready to pay for, a good quality product, which does come at a certain price. People did have that concept of bread being a very cheap product. And so when we came in with something a little more expensive, it took a while for even a Bombay audience to kind of start being willing to pay for this. Did you have that sort of evolution with your sort of customer base in Mysore as well?
The customers that we have that buy our bread, they're very specific people. They've been abroad, maybe lived in the US or lived in Europe, and they are all like, oh, I miss this so much. Thank you so much for offering this. And then there are obviously people who are saying, this is too dark crusted for me. I do not like it. And I never try to tell people this is how it should be. I always wanted people to know that that's how I like to do it. And I totally get it if you don't like it. And that's why we also do a lot of pastries that are maybe a bit more easy, more approachable for a lot of people than a thick crusted sourdough loaf that's baked for a longer time, that has a lot of flavor and is more chewy. And in terms of what we sell, the pastries win and outnumber the breads by worlds. I think what really hit off was that in the beginning, we were very approachable also in terms of we were not a shop front, our costs were less. So when we started out, our price point was actually really affordable. And we started going for pop-ups in Bangalore and spread the word there that this is what we do. And people again started really liking it. And I remember my first pop-up, I was on my own. I was late. I was trying to fold boxes and sell. And there were 20, 30 people already waiting for me to set up the stall. And I had no idea that people in Bangalore would even come to buy products from us that I have made. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a really big sign. I had no idea. And now that our business has evolved and obviously costs have risen a lot, our base ingredient cost has increased so much, electricity has increased so much. We have more obligations now in terms of paying PF and ESI, and there's a lot more tax payments going. Our prices have increased as well. So there's definitely certain people who feel like the price point is still too high, even though we offer a very different experience from what we used to. But I think a lot of people value good food, and they will always come. They will always understand that this is quality that you have to pay for in some sense, and they value that and they come back for that.
No, there's no doubt about that. Having sort of seen your the trajectory over the last few years, is there anything that you would have done differently looking back?
Yes, for sure. I would have made sure I have very systematic accounting from the beginning. I don't have to tell you.
Accounts is the downfall of many an entrepreneur. I have to say that a lot of people get into business because they feel passionate about some of the creative aspects.
Yeah,
right. And exactly. Yeah. And so, and I'm always the preacher for accounts. So, and I'm like, that's what's gonna keep you
to your Excel sheet. So. But once we had and still have really good accountants, they just had to work backwards so much, and it was so much work. And they used to ask me about all these entries. And 2 years later, what can you tell them? What did you spend this for? And what did you do here? And what did you file there? I have no idea. I wish I would have done that a little earlier, because then I would have had more time later on to actually focus on creatives or on team building exercises or R&D, which I had to do kind of midterm.
Deena, you talked about team building among many other things. And when I was researching for this chat, I read about a bar that you worked in. What was your learning from that you've been able to adopt at Sapa?
I think the main learning would be that a workplace can feel so giving and like home, where you're actually, once you would leave that workplace, you're actually missing a big part of yourself, and you miss the people and you miss the environment and your everyday life in that space. We didn't do specific team building, like corporatized workshops. It was just the atmosphere and the way that this spa worked, because it was fairly small, but we were all part-timers. So we were all doing things on the side as well. And some of our team members would be really into music or art or DJing or designers. I used to travel in and out. So we all had so many other inputs to give, and we were allowed to bring a lot of that into the workspace, whether that's making our own playlists or planning events or bringing in customers as well in that sense and forming a community around the bar. And I think that has a really great effect on the atmosphere of a place, on the team, on the customers, because we had a great sense of ownership. Once the customer walks in, I wanted to make sure that this person is taken care of. I wanted to make sure that this person's favorite drink is always available, because I know what this person has every Thursday when they come in at 8:30 p.m. And I know that they always come with this friend and that they usually like this wine, but now I don't have this wine. So I can already approach this person and be like, hey, I'm so sorry, I don't have your favorite wine, but I have something similar. Would it be okay for you if I serve you this? And that helps so much in terms of service. And that's what hospitality is about. And I think that's what you want, especially your service team to feel, but also the back team, that everybody works together for this experience for the customer. And at least at Sapa, the age average is very, very young. So I think people have a lot of stories. They still have a lot of things to figure out. And it's good if the workspace also becomes a pillar in their lives, so that even things might happen in their private lives that are maybe difficult or new, that they always know I can come to work and I know what my day looks like, and I'm appreciated for my work, and I know my skill set, and I'll be okay, whatever is happening on the side. I think that's a really great approach. We are 70% women in the team, so it's a very women-safe workplace. A lot of our team leaders are women. At some point, all our team leaders were women. And we have people who are mothers, who are single mothers, who have a lot of other work. But I think they always understand that Sapa is a safe workspace that supports them, and that we try to be there for them with all their struggles as well. And I think that would be a good workplace. And I always try to learn more again as I'm new to running a business. So I always want to make sure that I can provide that space for everybody in the team.
What next, right? Because you've definitely built, a brand to reckon with. It's known, beyond just Mysore and Bangalore and Hyderabad. It's, known pan-India, and people really look up to you. How do you see yourself being able to scale this outside of Mysore, with you being such an integral part of the, day-to-day business?
I've never been a fan of chains. So from a personal perspective, I'm very against scaling beyond one city, especially because you have to standardize so much, right? If you want to keep the quality high and if you want the product to be consistent, you need to make sure that all your processes are completely set. Everybody follows the process. And I always feel like in that procedure, you lose so much uniqueness and character. And I don't like that personally. And I think it's also a really cool thing if people are like, hey, I want to come to Mysore for this. And this is the place where I go to in Mysore. And I will make that happen. And for people in Mysore to know that this is for them as well. And it's not something that, oh, now it worked and now we just focus on all these other locations because we want to go to the bigger cities. I want this to be a Mysore thing.
That's a really lovely way of sort of thinking about it, that it's also for the people of Mysore and it's, there. And if people want it, they should come to Mysore. And it's a very good excuse to come to Mysore, that's for sure. I know it's long overdue for me. You've taught, workshops here at Max Street, your sourdough, your, Berliners, all of that. And I actually know people who've attended your workshops and even started businesses after attending them. How do you feel about that? Because I know a lot of chefs hold their cards close to their chest. I mean, for, good reason.
I mean, I think it's a really great compliment. That's the first thing, that my recipes can be used in many, many settings and people can use them and adapt them to their own thing. And they have great businesses coming out of that, which is an amazing thing. And don't look at it as competition. I think one is that the bakery scene in India is still very new. And the more people are there who have professional demands to suppliers, the more we might be able to import other brands of great Belgian chocolate. Right now you can only get one or two brands, but if there's more bakeries who are very serious and consistent and long-standing businesses, maybe we would have more variety in that, and that benefits all of us. Or even if the quantity of that chocolate, it's a community of businesses that helps everybody grow. That's one aspect. And the second aspect, or the second inspiration that I had, was when I read the first books of Tartine Bakery, because they published all of their recipes. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, everybody can do it. But at the same time, if you look at any choux recipe, house loaf recipe, a custard recipe, croissant recipe, the basic structure is always the same. Maybe there's a few variations of a little bit more sugar, a little bit less sugar, but the basic variation is exactly the same. But what you do with that, with your skill, is what matters. And your oven will be different from my oven. Your humidity will be different from my air humidity. And how I adapt to this in my setting for my customers and what I create out of that, that is unique to me and that is unique to somebody else. And I think in that way, nobody can really take on you, because then we are all different in how our hands work. And I think that's what matters way more than recipes. I'm very happy to share recipes. I'm very happy to share supplier names, phone numbers, because again, I think it benefits all of us. So I don't feel very protective over information or data that I have.
That's a great approach to take, and I completely sort of laud you for that. You talked a little bit about, one of the challenges or one of the things that you would have done differently being accounts. And I just want to talk about the business side of things, right?
I have a certain degree of being organized. So certain things come natural to me in the sense that I want things to be structured and organized, but I don't come from a business family. I've never studied economics. So all of that is very new to me. But I think basic concepts of it are very easy to read about. And doing workshops here or in other kitchens also is amazing, because I meet people like you that I can talk to. There's mentors, there's people who can give me advice that I can call up if I have questions. So that helps a lot. That's one thing. The second thing is that we were always somehow very lucky with cash flow. We were never in a huge issue that we just ran out of cash and I don't have anything. And it's not like I had to keep on pumping money in. I had specific phases where I knew, okay, I want to grow this much, so I need to bring this money in. But after that point, I wouldn't keep investing money. And our cash flow was always, luckily, touch wood, good enough to support small continuous growth. So I always want to make sure that if a scale is broken, I buy two more, so that next time if one scale breaks, I have another one. I don't want my team to feel restricted. So I always make sure I reinvest quite a bit into fixing equipment, getting new equipment, because I don't want that to be a struggle in daily operations for the team, because that can be demotivating as well. And I am very lucky because I feel like our accountants are very, very involved and they give me a lot of advice. They give me a lot of suggestions of what they think is happening or what I could be looking at more, which they don't have to do. It's purely coming from their goodwill that they want us to be successful as well. And I think that has been helping us a lot too. And at the same time, having an amazing team, having Ria also in the kitchen gives me a lot of time to do all these other things around the kitchen that are very required. I think you need to know that your kitchen is set to be able to do accounting and P&L well.
It's very hard for one person to do everything. And I think that's where, we try and support our chefs, whether it's in the bakery or the restaurants or whatever, to do that business side of things while they can focus on, their strengths and their sort of creative aspects. So I think that's definitely something I always advise people who want to get into the business, that you can't maybe do everything by yourself beyond a point. What would you say is today one of your biggest challenges?
Personally, I think my biggest challenge is how do I not lose touch with the creativity, because I'm doing all these other things around it and I'm involved in inventory, I'm involved in accounting, in hiring, in cleaning schedules and team meetings and team outings, and that I don't lose touch with why I started this, with doing things with my hands, having that connection to something. That's what drove me into this line, that I am not doing so much of now. So I really want to make sure that I find a way to get back into that. And I think Pooja Dingla, for example, has found a great way in having a test kitchen. So, I can go there and I can work on my things in my creative form while operations runs separately. So maybe I have to find a solution like that. I'm still not sure, but I definitely have to figure something out in that.
What would you advise someone looking to start a bakery today?
I will be prepared for, everybody says that, be prepared for a lot of work. Don't go into it blue-eyed that after 2 years it will be like this and amazing. Also, I would say make sure that you can survive for a few years without a big income, because it won't be a lot. And I think you have to be very realistic about that. And make sure you have your accounting set from the beginning. I tell that to everybody.
I love that. Well, on that note, we're going to switch up to something more fun, and we're going to play this game called Two Truths and a Lie. So I think you've come up with the 3 statements, and I'm going to guess which one's the lie.
So when I was a teenager, I used to be a dishwasher at the butcher in my village. I used to be a nanny for a German-Italian family in Milan. I used to work in the German film industry for a little bit.
This could all be true. This is really hard. I can see you doing all of that. I'm going to say the lie is that you worked in the film industry.
Yeah, correct. Very good.
Thank you for being so candid and, sharing your story. It's, I think there's a lot for people to learn. We hope to see you back at Mac Street Kitchen very soon.
I want to say one thing though. I feel like I've come here so many times. I know this drive to Mac Street Kitchen so well. I know the kitchen so well. I know the cafe, the coffee that you serve. It's like coming home. It always feels so amazing to come here, and I'm very happy to come.
Well, always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.